Hi, welcome to my next video. This time I wanted to show you this watercolors and pencil illustration, which I did with a bit of a twist. I sometimes like to experiment with my techniques and with my workflow to check if I can do the thing that I always do a bit differently to make the result better or the process more efficient. In this picture, I wanted to draw a cute street corner which has a bridge and a small space for just resting, and maybe a pedestrian passage and some sakura. This was all inspired by some street corners that I saw near our house. I took some reference photos to remember these things, but I decided not to draw any of these places directly, but to imagine a place of my own. So of course the first step was to make a lot of thumbnails to decide the contents of the picture, and here you can see me doing the last one. Before it, I did a lot of smaller ones just to figure out the point of view, the perspective, and I ended up with this strange kind of perspective from the top where we can see just the street corner. I thought about putting a person there sitting on one of these stools, and maybe eating a bento. Later I decided not to draw him and just focus on the atmosphere of the place itself. So the second part of this project was to make a bit more detailed sketch that will be the underdrawing for the final lines. Here I'm deciding how everything will look, so at this point using some references for the details is really useful. So while I'm drawing, let me explain why this project is unique in a way comparing to other illustrations that I did so far. I wanted to test if I can paint the watercolors, so the colors, on a different piece of paper than the final lines. Usually I would draw the final lines on the watercolor paper itself, then scan the lines and then color the picture. So I have basically two files, one with the lines and one with the lines and color, so I can later put the lines on top of the colored picture to make the lines stronger. This approach has some downsides because the paper gets warped while I paint with watercolors. You cannot see it with the naked eye, but when you put the lines on top of the watercolor painting, you have to spend then a lot of time adjusting the layer with the lines in Photoshop so it fits the lines that are already there on the paper. The bigger the picture, the longer it takes. It's really bothersome because the paper does not warp uniformly, so the places where I used a lot of water are warped more than the places with just light watercolor passages. The whole thing gets distorted, and matching the lines that I scanned first with the finished watercolor picture is difficult. What's more, it's also not easy to use pencils on watercolor paper. The heavy texture of some watercolor papers can prevent from making nice, smooth, precise lines that are as I would like them to be because of the texture. But on the other hand, the watercolor works really well on paper that has nice texture, so it would be nice to combine these two characteristics, the smooth paper for pencils and more textured paper for watercolors. That's why I decided to do this small experiment. I'm drawing here the final lines using really smooth paper that's great for pencils because this is the same paper that's used in animation studios in Japan, which has to be really nice and smooth and durable because the drawings of the characters, the movement of the characters is drawn with pencils with really precise lines. At least it was. So far, a lot of studios are moving to digital, but the ones that still use pencils for drawing characters use this paper. I got a huge batch of it because the studio was getting rid of the paper size that was meant for animations that were made in the old 4:3 ratio. So because everyone moved on to the 16:9 format and they didn't need the paper anymore, I took it, and I still really love to use it when I need smooth, good quality paper for my pencils. The next step was to scan the lines, clean them up a bit, and do a color test in Procreate. So later when I paint with watercolors, I don't have to worry about the color choices anymore and I can focus on the painting itself. In this case, I wanted to make this scene into a brightly lit scene with a lot of white still left in the picture, so I decided to keep the colors light, not to put any heavy shadows and heavy colors in it almost at all, but at the end top it with a blue shadow that's from the bridge and from a building on the left side that we cannot see, and also a little from the sakura tree. Okay, so the last part that was left to do by hand was to color the picture with watercolors. So I put the pencil lines that I did before under the watercolor paper on my tracing table and tried to paint with watercolors with the tracing table on. This proved a lot more difficult than I was expecting. It was hard to see what I was doing, what colors I was applying to the paper with the tracing table on, so I had to keep turning it on and off to confirm that what I'm doing is correct. And even though I have a foot switch for this tracing table, it's just a simple push button in a box that is on the power cable of this tracing table. I installed it myself so I don't have to reach with my hand to the switch of the tracing table each time when I want to confirm how something looks without the light. But even with this trick, it was really not fun to paint just with watercolors on the tracing table. I could not see what I was doing, I could not see the lines really well, so I had to kind of guess and approximate where the line is when painting, so the thing turned out more loose in style in the end than the style I was aiming for. And in the end, I don't think I gained so much flexibility, speed or efficiency that would justify using this technique at all. I liked some aspects of this picture. I liked the pencil lines a lot because the paper just worked great, because the animation paper just works great for pencils and I already know that. And of course, as I expected, putting the pencil lines on the finished watercolors was really easy because I didn't have to match any pencil lines that were already there. I could just place the lines and that was that. Okay, this is how the picture turned out. This is the watercolors layer and here is the final picture with the lines put on top. I think it looks really nice. I like how the lines and the watercolors actually don't match perfectly, but in the end I think there are better methods of reaching similar results. Okay, that's it for this video. I hope you liked it. As always, feel free to comment, share and subscribe, and you can also support me on Patreon. It's your support there that allows me to make these videos. Okay, see you in the next one. Bye!